there was this hashtag women making women stories, and I used to always feel, but I want to make science fiction like.
We have had these range of women in cinema who've just been flawed, but just because they're human. Yeah. There's no backstory to being flawed. This is how she is.
While there is a lot of feminist cinema, female-driven cinema, I have to say that a large part of it is tokenist. Because I don't think that unless the conditioning of the creators change, from which we create something far more nuanced.
Yeah, I think people like to watch bicharis.
Yes.
I think there is a thing
Bichya
for...
bichari.
Initially, you feel like you have to put up those appearances.
Yeah.
Like, as a director,
Because
you
often
have
understood
to,
as lack of control.
Yeah, lack of control.
Right.
Like I'll be able to control, trust me.
Yeah.
But I don't have to shout for that. But that took me a while, like almost a decade, to arrive at being myself and being very comfortable with it.
I think situations and environments make you secure or insecure. I think a lot of women become aggressive or try to be, try to be controlling because you're deep down not secure because you feel you're being judged.
Right.
And you have to prove that you can.
That you'll be taken
that you can be
seriously.
taken seriously. I think a secure environment makes a secure home.
So today we are here at Butterfly High in Oshiwara, and this is House of Surkh presents the Women's Day Roundtable with Humans of Cinema. And today I am joined by an extremely esteemed panel of guests that we are so privileged to have. My name is Harshit, this is Ahona. And guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, it's just, we were trying to make this panel happen for such a long time, and we were thinking that, we needed to have a group of people who can give us every perspective around how cinema is made, and this is just the most perfect panel, right?
Yeah, and generally, there is all that conversation about like Women's Day and, having a day for women, do we really need that? And that, but
do you feel that we need another separate day? There's always this debate going on, right? Generally.
Well, in an ideal world, no, but we don't live in an ideal world. So till then, we'll have to mark the day. But hopefully, in a more equal world, we wouldn't have to.
Fair.
we thank you so much for being here. बहुत सारी बातें हमारे पास करने के लिए about cinema, about women in cinema, about representation, about writing, filmmaking, acting, designing. But I want to start off because at Humans of Cinema, this is the question that we generally always start with. It's the impact of cinema. So today I want to start with asking you guys, is there specifically a female character that has left such a deep influence on your life that it has impacted your life in a significant way, you keep going back to it? Any female character from fiction, from cinema?
Wonder Woman.
Really?
Always. She's in costume, she's fighting the world, she's figuring it out. She doesn't need a day to show that it's Women's Day. Every day is what she does and what she does well enough. So for me, it's always been Wonder Woman.
Right.
And from the time when, of course, when it wasn't so beautifully done and costumed. But yeah, all through.
Were you read of the comics as well?
Yeah. So I'm talking about the comics. I'm a dinosaur here. Amongst this panel. But yes, the comics, starting from when they first brought her out, when she swirled and came onto set. But yeah.
Right.
I think I spoke about a couple of female characters the previous time when I was talking Harshit. But there's this one female character that from the film Mera Naam Joker, and I spoke about her in another panel also last year. It's Vedanti Mala's character, Vedanti Mala Jean, Mera Naam Joker, where she's dressed as a man when she meets Raju's character, and for a long time, you're trying to trick the audience that this is a man and not a woman till he discovers that she's a woman, and then her journey of accepting herself as a woman because she was trying to be a man to fit into a man's world. And I think I watched Mera Naam Joker बहुत छोटी थी, I think still single digit, because it was really it was Mera Naam Joker, and it had circus and everything, and family watched old films at home. So, but I think that really left an impact, as you say, because identity is something that that sort of I think it just made me question identity as I was growing up, or watching more films or reading more fiction, and that sort of set it for me.
A lot of performances that have sort of inspired me and sort of were a part of my subconscious, I think, growing up, which I now realize might have been the first seeds of wanting to be a performer. And I think one of the performances that one actor who I really loved was Sridevi, because I thought she was one of the first people I had watched in my childhood who could do comedy well. And I think that really has been an inspiration for a while. And I don't know why, I sort of feel hurt by the idea that women in comedy don't get, don't fall into the same sentence for many people, and that angers me a little bit. And so that Sridevi in all her films was an inspiration for me. And she had a physicality to her comedy also, which was great fun to watch. Like every muscle on her face would twitch, and then something very fun would happen.
She was so confident to like,
But otherwise, I think as inspiration, I was very sort of inspired by a lot of women, sportswomen. And I think growing up, tennis was something I used to watch and play. So I was a huge Steffi Graf fan, and I just thought that she had such a dignified way of playing such an aggressive game. And I sort of really admire that.
No, for me, growing up, there was a film that influenced me a lot was Matrix, and I was a huge Trinity fan. Like not just because of the style or everything, but also that she was in command of herself, and there was like this air of authority around her. Like of course Neo was everybody was after, but I was so fascinated with Trinity. Like from a small town, just to see her the way she was carrying herself, like I was very excited about Trinity overall. Like in fact, I had short hair for the longest time, so I was a huge Trinity fan. And now I'm raising a daughter. She's very girlish and all that, and and I think when we were growing up, we used to look up to male characteristics as a position of authority. And my daughter saw this film Legally Blonde, and I saw it with her. And I just loved it so much because that girl was just embracing her feminine, that aspect of hers, and still like really winning the role. So that also, those two characters I quite liked.
And that's very interesting also, because a lot of times like these films get dismissed as chick flicks.
Yes.
Legally Blonde, and people don't realize how much merit they really have.
Yes. She went to Harvard.
And she still was that person who's obsessed with how she looks. And she's still, I mean, that's perfect.
And she said, I know the hair color, I know this. It was nice to not, dismiss it as like, oh, it's a girlish thing, not important for the real world. So I thought that was nice to embrace.
Or that it has to be one or the other.
Exactly. And the whole idea of the film is hinged on her knowing this fact as a woman who is into these practices of beauty, which was such a smart thing to do in that film.
I mean, I really had to like dig my subconscious there in that little round that happened. And so, I mean, I think as a slightly like younger person, from a decade ago, I remember getting viscerally impacted by Rosetta from the Arden Brothers, and that was a character arc that stayed with me, and it really qualified into like help me understand like how to like agency is a really complicated business. And so for me that was a very big marker of what I understood of myself. And how I need to now reroute this back into my work. But if I actually go back into my childhood, and I actually was like trying to be really honest with myself and not trying to derive from any other character or someone that sounds like a feminist. Actually, the one female character that really I used to viscerally be drawn to was Madhuri Dixit's character from Tezab. There's something really interesting happens in that film. It's written by a man, Kamlesh Pandey, which is something I found out later, because as a child, of course, I did not know why I used to feel so drawn to her. But there is the reason why there was a complex situation that she finds herself in, where she actually lashes out at the South Bombay girl, which is played by Mandakini in the film. And she was trying to steal her boyfriend, or so she imagines. Because the girl is like, as we can see, has been breadcrumbed by the boy. So it's actually about like both of them are failing the Bechdel test, and they're like making this conversation about the boy. But in that moment, otherwise Madhuri Dixit, whose background is sort of muted in the film, in that moment when she lashes back, she uses language that actually comes from where she is, or the kind of life that she actually has hidden, and she speaks in a very crass language, and something that we later relate to, and we understand that she's a dancer. and that is why she also, like, her father has kind of pimped her into this. So we kind of like put it all together, and that character used to like stay. I used to be like, how can a girl be like, she can go to college, she can like actually hang with somebody, but she also does the cabaret on the side, and she's so good at it. Like, she's like a bit of everything, and she has to like play these sides to different kinds of class. And that sort of like, in that moment I would never understand why do I like her so much. It's only, I think a little later I kind of understood that it possibly is my own journey perhaps, that I have to play different people to different classes. Like, and that is something that stayed with me. So I always like to go back, and even now like I think I have a more academic lens now. But then I've tried to understand now why did I like those characters, like like Rasika said, Chalbaz, like, you know, where these two girls are like, and especially the you know, the Gita part of Chalbaz, like this girl is like wild. And you know, so those were some exciting things that stay with you, and you like kind of like give you that sort of feeling and encourage you, and like that you can do this, that this works, you can like be brave on paper, you know.
Right. You know, I was going to, because when we were discussing the questions yesterday, we were just talking about how recently we have had these range of women in cinema who have just been flawed, but just because they're human. There's no backstory to being flawed. There was a phase when in every time there was a woman with some kind of an grey area, if there was a grey area, there was always some trauma in the past that explained that grey area. Do you feel like now we are just allowing women to be human on screen? This is how she is, you know.
I think there's a lot more dialogue that has started on social media, and as people, I think we're talking about traumas or our histories, or you know, a lot of other things, but where we just see everyone as just human, and we are just becoming more tolerant of, or more understanding, for lack of a better word, that, you know, we understand that you're coming from somewhere, hence you behave this way, or you know, I think it's also a generation thing, I feel, where I think the conversations are much more transparent, and that's why the storytelling and the characters are so transparent, because when you see someone grey, you still see them human. I mean, you don't really attach morals to it, but you just are like, all right, it's a consequence of a lot of history there, and it's not a bad person. So I think that understanding is something that has happened lately, and for good. I think it's good.
No, and recently I remember I was working on an ad, and they wanted a, you know, women-centric concept, and I was like, you know, not everything has to be like her liberating, and you know, this just giving context to her. It's also in a way making her human itself is also liberating. You know, we always have this prototype, like women will either be like this goddess, this Mother Mary figure, or this vamp, especially like, you know, a lot of traditional comics. So it's nice to see them as normal functioning humans and just being humans. So
I'm actually emerging from an Ormax report, which actually is like taken our female character, and like a lot of men in the room have actually pointed out at the lack of character of the heroine, which is like actually, without naming the film or the character, like that was the intention, the creative intention, to create a character who's basically made some strategic manipulative choices, because that's her line of work, where she is supposed to like indulge in statecraft, but that has been misconstrued for, especially by male audiences in that Ormax report, as lack of character, lack of integrity, and the same qualities, if I were to like literally you vest them in a man, would be considered dynamic, would be considered sharp, cunning, shrewd, someone who's playing to the job, weirdly, that is exactly what the film is about. But the funny thing is that, you know, we've got such a stark sort of like, there's a stark divide between how the men reacted to it and how the women reacted to it. And you just know that, you know, actually maybe we are growing only cosmetically, because while there is a lot of feminist cinema, female-driven cinema, there is a lot of scope for now grey characters, female grey characters. I have to say that you know, there is like a large part of it is tokenist, because I don't think that unless the conditioning of the creators change, I think we'd like to like sit back and say, oh, it is the audience that are not ready, etc. But also I think nobody wants to really take the risk of like really overhauling that, and people are just like sort of falling. So it's a catch-22 situation of like how some of it is also just tokenist. We haven't revised the conditioning that from which we like create something far more nuanced.
Yeah, I think people like to watch bicharis.
Yes.
I think there is a thing
Bichya
for
bichari.
No,
But I was actually
no, that's true. Yeah.
talking about what Atika said, and I had felt a couple of years ago that this whole women-centric films was an act of tokenism, and it was just a box to check. And I was like, now where is this going to go? We're going to have all these women who are resembling men, and the same qualities, but it's not going to actually be a celebration of femininity in any way or anything like that. But I have to say that didn't happen. I felt in the work that I was reading or watching or doing, I felt like the intent was there. But yes, the overhaul of this entire prejudice is not possible. That is something that unfortunately will be cyclical and will be something that we'll have to keep battling and finding our way around. But I felt like the intent was right. But it was fascinating to see many times that something was written with the correct intent, with wanting to sort of empower or wanting to humanize the woman and really sort of not looking at her in a sexualized way. But somehow, somewhere down the line, it did become like that, and it did become sexualized. It did become, even with the best intentions. And I think that's a function of our references being like that for so long that, and it's not about men making it or women making it. I mean, we're all a part of a patriarchal society. To kahin na kahin hum sabka prejudice aa hi jata hai. So it was a social sort of experiment.
Whatever you do, whatever you write, whatever happens, if you're designing it, it's always sexualized. I find that there's no chance I can look at a woman's body and say, okay, let's work with this.
Right.
It's always a question of, oh, she's looking too big, or she's looking to this, or, let's make her look better, let's make her look thinner, or, bottom heavy, top heavy, beautiful, this thing. It's constant with when I'm working. There's nothing, and I understand but we're in cinema, we're not in fashion. So I don't understand why it's constantly being brought down to the beauty of it instead of to the humanistic point of it. If this is who you are, and I talk a lot of my actresses through this, and they're like, oh ma'am, I don't look so good, I'm this, and like, those are your problems. I have to create what I need to create for film. And you can create that. A woman can be sexy without being looking like a model. You have to work that in, and there's constant fight and there's constant trying to change that, but it always comes back to the point of, oh, they need to look really good on cinema, and oh, what's the best they can look. But it's not what's the best they can look. It's what's the best that for the character, and the best you can look humanly. I look a certain way. I'm a big Amazonian woman. I'm not going to look like anyone else here.
Of course.
But I have to play to that, to whatever my character is playing into. But it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And I deal with that a lot.
Yeah.
So that de-nuancing is something that is actually like you said, that it's there at the intent level, but by the time it's a finished product, something or the other, there's so many external influences, largely business motivated, that sort of like take out those layers, and it's like it's a lot of generation loss. So it's so much, I feel there's so much we create in terms of subtext, but it just keeps getting like falling through the cracks.
But I feel like we don't have that for men.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with characters of men, I don't have that. I'm not discussing their body type unless there's something I'm changing.
Right.
But with women, every single time I'm only discussing body type. And I'm not saying that don't show more skin and don't be sexier and don't do that. I'm okay with all that. I'm saying, why does it always have to come down to that discussion?
It's male gaze.
It is male gaze.
Yeah.
It is male gaze, and I'm constantly saying this. Because even when I'm styling someone, I'm like, okay, what do the women in my group think and what do the men in my group think? There is that absolute distinction between the two that you do, and you do deal with. And my questions are, do you want them to be, to be sexy for a male, or do you want it to be sexy for a female? And sexy for a female is different than sexy for a male.
Right.
So, and I have to play into that because I'm designing that.
You know, the thing that you were saying about the OMAX report, or audience, especially the male audiences, how they reacted to the flawed characters. मेरा इस बारे में थॉट मैंने एक बार एक स्टोरी भी डाली थी. You know who are two of the most hated characters in recent like global fiction or global cinema? One is Skylar from Breaking Bad, and second is Jenny from Forrest Gump. Right? And especially men, like of course most of the haters, in fact all of the haters of these characters are men. You will see so much hatred for them on social media. आप Reddit पे चले जाओ, किसी भी आप forum में चले जाओ, इतनी ज़्यादा नफरत है ना उन characters के लिए.
For Jenny, it is unreal though.
Looks like
for
she
Jenny,
led
it is unbelievable. Yeah, and even for Skylar, it is crazy.
Yeah.
So जब इस चीज़ के बारे में बात होती है ना, लोग बोलते हैं कि और and this conversation also started happening in India when Family Man came out, especially the second season, and there was a lot of hate for the characters played by Priyamani and
Samantha.
No, not for Samantha.
She's
Because
a
she was the
cheating
wife
wife.
who
She's
Yeah,
a cheating
wife
wife.
and for the daughter's character as well.
Oh, of course.
There was a lot of hate.
Yeah.
और मैंने ये बोला कि इन सारी फिल्मों में एक चीज़ जो कॉमन है वो ये है कि they were all written by, I'm not saying that उसमें लिखने में कोई गलती है, मैं कह रहा हूँ कि इवेंचुअली तुम जिन कैरेक्टर्स के लिए हेट कर रहे हो एज इफ दे आर just bad women who have done something
Written
bad
by
towards the
men.
society. Eventually there are characters that were written by men. अगर तुम्हें कुछ प्रॉब्लम है भी, अगर तुम्हें इतनी नफरत जतानी ही है तो फिर उन लोगों के साथ जताओ ना जिन्होंने लिखा है. मतलब उसका तो कोई सेंस ही नहीं बनता कि तुम ऐसे हेट कर रहे हो उनके जैसे वो असली लोग हो जिन्होंने कुछ पता नहीं कितना बड़ा गुनाह कर दिया हो.
Yeah, you know, so I was adapting Great Indian Kitchen, and so we had a poll, and there was a massive survey done as to how men and women react to it. So a lot of men's reaction to Great Indian Kitchen was like, ये लड़की में प्रॉब्लम है, वो बेचारी, मतलब वो बेचारा तो अपना काम कर रहा है, वो कर रहा है.
Even after watching that film, even after watching that film,
उनके ऊपर कोई असर नहीं हुआ.
उसको गुस्सा क्यों आ रहा है? They were not understanding that. And I
point
said,
is here
इतना
they
obvious
pass
पूरा
aside.
फिल्म ही उसके बारे में आपको समझा रहा है कि you know क्या प्रॉब्लम है. उसका POV, आप एक बार तो उसके शूज में जाओ, पूरी फिल्म में उसके शूज में हो. But that was the majority poll, like you know कि इसमें इसकी क्या गलती है? Like you know बेचारे लड़के की क्या गलती है?
Right. My God, I mean, this
Imagine.
is just. But this is also something that is, it's a very positive thing that has happened now, I feel. This visibilizing of labor.
Yeah.
For a very long time, you just didn't see women laboring on screen. As you were saying, it was a lot to do with looking beautiful while being stressed, or maybe, you know, she's going through a traumatic situation, but she's still looking beautiful. Now it's all about, you know, it's come to the point where we can look at labor.
I was saying कि modern times बनाई थी बहुत पहले Charlie Chaplin ने. This is women go through that. You are repeatedly doing the same work every day. Like, but we never, and like before, you know, industrialization, but we never looked at it like that. Like you know, the unpaid labor and you know, and like the data and all that research we did was unreal. Like you know.
Yeah, I had a professor who used to talk about his mother when he was, you know, telling us that you don't see this in cinema. The stuff that my mother has done, you never see this in cinema. And he referred to her as domestic Sisyphus. It was like, har subha she starts the same thing. Every morning she's doing the same thing. And I've never seen this happen on cinema. Which is, I mean,
I think also writing-wise, if I may add, that it's not just you know, strong or female characters that we need to write. We need to also write vulnerable men. I think I think it's, you know, a lot of films that come to me that are written by men, and they'll be like, this is a very, you know, female-oriented. We are making a film about a strong woman, and I'm like, what is it, a coffee or something? What is this strong? So you know, but I don't see vulnerable men. It's also because I think there needs to also, you know, we need to also condition ourselves to watch men, because you know I mean, I'm sure men and women, they both go through a lot of things, and you know there's been a lot of course more male writers, and there's been a lot more conversations around men, and men being the hero and men being the providers, and you know, like not as many stories about women, or you know, what your professor was saying. But we've also not seen enough men breaking down on screen. We've also not seen enough men feeling bad, or you know, being vulnerable, or feeling bad for their wives, or you know, I think we also need a balance, a fair amount of balance of seeing those men on screen as well. Maybe that will make a difference. I don't know.
Coming to first of all, can we take a moment to just applaud Rasika?
Yes.
She has a theatre release right now.
Please watch it on your way back. Yes. Drop by at City Mall. There's a show at 3:45. Buy some tickets.
Yes.
And if you're watching, please watch Fairy Folk if you haven't already.
Yes.
अगर आपने मामी वगैरह में नहीं देखी, it's playing in the theaters. So please go watch it. And I love the film. I am the biggest fan. मैं तो जब से देखी है तब से बात ही करे जा रहा हूँ लोगों के साथ कि भाई जब भी फिल्म आए बाहर तो प्लीज देखना.
हाँ, Fairy Folk.
But Rasika, I mean, speaking about especially now, you know, you've also turned producer with the film, and it is such an interesting film. I mean, you haven't seen it, but it is made in the most interesting way. It's made completely independently. It is shot inside a house, and you can see that you have made it with a lot of friends. And you've, I mean, you know, that's just indie cinema in its purest form. And a lot of it is improvised as well, right? Like
All
most
of
of the
it
film.
is.
Almost all of the dialogue in the film.
The entire film is improvised.
Entire film
there was
is
not
improvised.
one dialogue in the film. There was just a rough structure to every scene so that the directors could sort of tell us what he wants to achieve from the scene. But how exactly we achieve it was not scripted.
Like a My Clay film.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And it was, but it's also dealing with a lot of, like, it's magic realism meets relationship drama. So, I mean, we'd all worked in an improv group together, and sometimes people think that improv matlab ki kuch bhi kar lo, you know? Like, but it's not like that. It's like a sport. You have to practice it with each other before. No take is like the other in improv. It's every time you do it, it's different. It's like every time you play a game in a sport, there's no two games which are like each other, but there are some rules that you have to follow, and you have to have practiced it enough with your team.
Yeah.
So we had all improvised together before, so that I think saw us through. Otherwise, it would have been a challenge.
Yeah. But how is it to do an independent film like this, which of course the whole process is completely different versus you are doing like big shows as well, and how different is it to be on a set like that?
You know, I was just, Arati and I was just talking about it before we started, and I was telling her that every time I do an indie film, I say I'm never going to do it again because it's so hard to get through every phase of it. I mean, we take so much for granted on a regular set. There was no hair and makeup team on this shoot. There were no vanity vans. We just ordered food when we broke for lunch and all of that. I had done a film with Karan in 2011. Which was also an indie film. It's called Share. And on that film, we had, on a good day, a 4-member crew. And in Fairy Folk, 10 years later, I had an upgrade. We had a 10-member crew. So that's how indie cinema works, right? We've been promoting it and releasing it theatrically for the last 1.5 to 2 weeks. And we've all had to make calls to people and say, you know, please help us out, please support our film. That's the kind of stuff you have to do at every stage of an indie film, and it's of course you own it completely, so it's beautiful for that, and there's no creative interference. You know that this is a voice that this is the vision of the director, and he had an opportunity to sort of put it out there in the way he wanted it. But yeah, it is very hard. So it takes a lot of courage.
I really applaud actors who do independent films.
Yeah.
I remember when I was shooting Cargo, it was completely independent, you know, same situation. And at the same time, Shweta and Vikrant, they were shooting Mirzapur, that's your show. And I remember they were shooting in Mehboob studio, and I was like, oh my god, like they have vanity vans. And they're coming to my shoot, poor Vikrant, they were cafeteria, the set was outside a cafeteria. And it was a night shoot, so his boy had put a gadda and was sleeping on that gadda. And we were like dragging a fan for him. So I was like, you know, I really applaud them to, you know, to be able to coexist, because they need to exist in both the worlds, and just to support independent films, it's like a huge thing, you know, that shows real passion.
Yeah, Fairy Folk was so independent, we had no boy or anything. I own everything. But it's good to have these alternating experiences like Atika was saying, because, you know, then you go on to a more organized set where all this is functioning, but then maybe you don't feel as much a part of the creative process as you would say in an indie film. But that is not to say कि indie में हर समय ऐसा होता है और थोड़ा commercial में हर समय ऐसा होता है. It's finally the team that you are working with. But I would make an indie film only with the people I love, because honestly otherwise there's very little payoff for it, because really love in the sense, love in terms of a creative collaboration.
Of course,
you know, because I would really trust them with that. Otherwise, it's very difficult to do.
I mean, my 2 cents on this is that I actually think that making a film is misery. So you just need to keep alternating. You have to alternate your misery. If you keep shifting from intelligent commercial to indie, you kind of like take, you keep retasting what it was like when you were never getting paid and you didn't have money to like pay your rent, and now you have some money to pay your rent, but you are like extremely dissatisfied with how it was sort of homogenized and what sort of came out of your work. So you kind of like keep finding a way to like, I think now I've reached a point in 15 years where now I know that I need both. Every once in a while, and a hybrid of both, and each time it's going to leave me miserable. So that I know.
One kind of misery versus the other.
It is a very tough line of work, and anyone who thinks that they can like just do it for one joy or one project or the other, it's never about one project. It's never about 2 years. It's actually about like 20 years. It's always about 20 years.
Because it also sucks you in.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's the only time I feel I'm alive when I'm making a film.
That creative process, and you're buzzing, and you're brainstorming with people, and you're actors, directors, DOPs who are really irritating you, whatever. It's just, it is the whole system of putting it together. You're just like,
we're all telling
like that Professor Asthana jo Munna Bhai MBBS. I just laugh, like, the bigger the problem, the more I'm laughing,
I actually was reading a quote from Corrida because I watched Monster and it really moved me. And then I just started reading on Corrida, and then I was just reading about his life, and he's now in his 60s and he's made this wonderful, he's making such wonderful films, especially in the last decade. And so I was just reading about how he actually he started his work in documentaries and then moved to fiction at some point, and there is this ethic that he follows on the set, that everybody will be really kind and gentle to each other and no one will speak with raised voices, and that is because there's one line to qualify that when he was doing documentary work, he went through some really aggressive behavior from his employers, and then he made it a rule of his life that he will always be gentle with everyone, and you can just see it when I read it. I had goosebumps like coursing through my body, because I knew that is where his cinema comes from. That is where the
it reflects in his films.
Exactly.
That you say it, a lot of the things, a lot of the tenderness,
the humanism
actually
comes from this psychological awareness of every, and being sensitive to every little nuance actually comes from the man himself. Someone who can actually dole out that sort of equality, egalitarianism in his general behavior and conduct, life ethic, and that is why. So it's always percolates from down up to down, I feel, and that is why when you were speaking of hierarchy, like I feel that it's not even so much about it's man woman, but even above that there is an Indian hierarchical structure that is at work, that's everywhere in Indian sort of like awareness. Anything that you do in India comes with that. Like it is impossible for me to say, and I who actually considers herself as an equal person, like in almost all situations, I keep calling myself out every day, I will not date my auto driver or I will not date my Uber driver. But that cannot be said, for example, in another country. If I lived in another country with different kind of circumstances, different kind of sociological outlooks, that won't be said. But even for me, I know that with I will only date somebody with certain kind of merit and achievement, and I wouldn't want to go it's not about, so I will relax on other aspects, like for me, caste, class, money, those things don't matter. Even looks like that much, like maybe basic fitness, but like largely. But I wouldn't be
good to know, Atika.
I'm just like doing my dating bio.
This is just Atika's pitch to everyone.
But I'm just like coming back to the point of Corrida, like how systemic this is. Like basically a lot of what happens on the film sets, and then eventually what also gets chronicled in our films comes from basic conditioning of who we are as people, and somewhere that needs to be like brought into some sort of like a circumspect sort of like purview.
Something like I grew up as a very calm and this child, and when I started directing, especially in a film school, like I was like one of those two girls, and there's a mythology of male directors, how the directors are, this personality, and none of us had it.
Yes.
So I used to pretend to be like, ye karo, and it used to not work for me like that because that's not my natural personality. As it is, I'm invested in creating, and then I'm trying to be like unnecessary bossy, unnecessary this. So over a period of time, because also I made a lot of short films, like around 8 to 9 short films. So I had my own team, and I kind of learned to become comfortable with being my calm self and this self. So in fact now my shoots are so quiet, like people wonder shoot ho raha hai ki kya ho raha hai, itni awaaz hi kyun nahi aa rahi? Because that's the nature. Like I cannot fight my basic nature and pretend to be someone else, especially when I'm doing a work that is so honest to me, like the directing of film. So that's also something like initially you feel like you have to put up those appearances. Like, as a director,
because
you
often
have
understood
to,
as lack of control.
Yeah, lack of control. You should be able to control. I said, like, I'll be able to control. Trust me. But I don't have to shout for that. I have like if I have to, but like I don't have to. I can choose to. I can figure out my way like over a period of time. But that took me a while, like almost a decade, to arrive at being myself and being very comfortable with it.
I think situations and environments make you secure or insecure. I think a lot of women become aggressive or try to be, try to be controlling because you're deep down not secure because you feel you're being judged, and you have to prove that you can, that you can be taken seriously. I think a secure environment makes a secure woman. You're personally, professionally, everywhere. So I think
I agree with you, but I do have a lot of assistants I deal with, and if I don't raise my voice, I pretend to shout every once in a while. I come in there and I'm like, I really believe that, and I walk out and I'm like,
I believe it's okay if it's gender neutral.
I'm hiring especially for him that
it's crazy. Because I look like this, I behave like this. I'm a mad Parsi, Bavi, Punjabi, all of it put together. I have high energy. I'm constantly always like, So people are like, do we listen to her? Do we not listen to her? So I really have to go in there and be like, okay, I have to. And I do. I go in there like every once in a while, and then I come out and I'm actually laughing, and people are like,
but maybe they know that. Maybe they know it's a discipline thing.
Everyone knows that.
Maybe
but
they know
I
it's a discipline
really
thing.
feel like, why am I doing this? Like really.
And one thing also I try is like, and of course it's when you are dealing with a big team, it's tougher. But I try to have very strong one-on-one relationship with all my HODs and actors, because I have a very long pre-production where I have to call them. We have to cook for each other, because then that trust is there. And when you're on this set, like there's a very strong understanding. They know the vision. They know how much of this pile of paperwork for that one design. So they also understand that. So that has also helped, so of course you will sometimes not have that luxury when you're doing an ad shoot. So you have to figure out your strategy to make your film the best you want, So for me, this works for now. Let's see. Next set mein pata chala main
But I also feel this sort of takes me to this idea of how women are survivalists by nature, not a survivor of the system, or survivalists. So it's actually genetic in our somewhere we know that we have to play the game. We know we have to come out as winners. We know where we have to play ourselves timid. We know. So somewhere I think we're constantly negotiating. Something I did also with Agra, where while it is about the male perverted character, there's so much that the women are doing to negotiate in a space like that for their transactional sort of supremacy, for them to survive this game, for them to continue to have skin in the game in some sense, in some cases literally. So it's basically actually women are constantly working around a structure, a system. But I feel that not that I don't think all men are like that, but most men don't even think about it. A man goes and just stands on the set and everybody just covers. There is that sense, but a woman actually has to have a strategy in place. She really has to rethink and actually has to cook with her HODs, etc. You know what I'm saying? A man doesn't have to do this. A man actually doesn't have to talk to his chief AD, and that is when the chief AD is going to actually behave really well on the set. So there is this sort of deep conditioning that is at work, but I'm not saying that I will stop doing that. Of course I wouldn't, because I know that I have to get to the next stage, so I can't just constantly keep thinking, ओ इसको ज़्यादा अटेंशन मिलता है, मुझे नहीं मिलता है क्योंकि मैं एक औरत हूँ. वो क्या, अभी उसमें क्या पढ़ना है?
वो आइडेंटिफाई करना बहुत मुश्किल है.
हाँ,
दैट इज द प्रॉब्लम.
उसको आइडेंटिफाई करते रहना ही actually somewhere I feel is half of our feminism. That's that idea that how to cope with this in a way that continues to give me more empowerment over a period of time, if not immediately, is I feel a large part of our job, as not just for the characters we create but also our own situation and place in the ecosystem.
I feel like I don't know whether it's gender as much as it is the industry. I feel like since I'm an outsider, I come in here, and for me, whatever job you do, whatever work you do, whatever you do, if you go to a boarding school, if you go anywhere else, I think it's how you cope with something. And I think I've never thought of it as male-female. I have two brothers. My parents never treated us any differently. In fact, we all come from the same small town, which is lovely. It was a little utopia. I never felt that, you know. I did my bit when I was younger. I went to rural development. I did, you know, I worked with women. But I never had that sense that I was any different. But I do feel like that coping mechanism comes with whatever work you're doing. I feel like I cope on a film set. And I keep saying this, every film set is a different marriage. You're trying to figure out what the rules are, how you deal with those rules, how you work that. I was like, it's a marriage. You have to figure out what this marriage is, how you're going to make it work, and how it's going to happen.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where did you learn this coping? Like, can I just like open up the box in a way where I can kind of like look at you as a person with certain kind of socioeconomic advantages, with certain kind of education, with certain kind of privilege. When I say privilege, I don't exactly mean only financial. Like, for example, if you had educated parents or parents who made you feel like an equal when you were growing up. So compared to somebody, for example, who did not grow with those kind of means, somebody like also like dealing with a lot of other psychological issues, and then emerging into a system like this where your optics kind of like play to how you're being treated on the set, for example. So I feel that I'm not in, like, I have a feeling, I'm not really sure, I'm not like a social scientist, but I have a feeling that it is not my place to have an intersectional wisdom on another person's like experience of reality. And that is why I would say that to rule out gender completely from a hierarchical situation is something I wouldn't make the mistake of, like to say that there is no gender optic at work or there is no gender discrimination at work.
No, I'm saying that it doesn't affect it. I don't see it. I see other things that I'm coping with other than gender. And I, like you said, privilege. I feel like I deal with privilege. I deal with coping with privilege, which is why I'm egalitarian. Because I'm constantly aware of my privilege more than my gender. I'm constantly aware of my privilege.
There is also the reason why you may not have.
This is the problem exactly, that in any situation where there is some kind of discrimination, it's very hard to identify that there has been a discrimination and why. It's often a mix of many things, right? You can't say that you can't identify clearly, which is why it's so hard to sort of combat, because you don't know where it started and where it went, and you can't say that no, he treated me like that and spoke to me like that, or she treated me like that because I'm a woman.
Because I can't dismiss the entire gender because of that. I can't say men are like that, because I've met amazing men. I mean, I've grown up with my brother, I have a lot of male friends who are wonderful people, and I have wonderful female friends, and there are very difficult females I've met and there are very difficult men I've met, but that's at individual levels. And that's very, very independent of who they are, irrespective of their gender orientation, completely. So I don't know if I can completely say that, oh, I'm a woman and that's why people are so mean to me, and you know, that's why there's a hierarchy. I think it's of course there are situations where, you know, I mean even something as small as when I'm driving, or you know, when I'm at a restaurant, maybe somebody will treat me a little differently as if I was a man. You know, if they will cross me, they'll be like, "Arey, aurat gaadi chala rahi hai." I know there are situations like that.
Or
and
when they bring the tap to the man.
Or they will bring the tap to the man. You know, of course there are situations like that, but I don't think because of that, those few or maybe many examples, I can dismiss
the entire male, the community gender for that, because there are, I mean, look at the films that so many men have made in this country. Look at what Shyam Benegal has done. Look at Satyajit Ray who's made Devi. Look at Raj Kapoor who's made so many well-written female characters. There are so many Ghatak female characters. There are so many. So I don't know if it's specifically a gender thing, but yeah, there are situations where you can feel cornered, and I think you just need to have your voice and stick around and be like, yeah, okay.
I mean, I was just saying that it's hard to identify where that prejudice is coming from, whether it's on the basis of class or gender, or you don't know whether it's coming from a man or woman is another thing. But that is very difficult to identify, to call out, to accept, understand, and find a way to articulate and all of that. So those are, I think, unfortunately, things that we will have to constantly deal with.
Yeah. I think this is very interesting. The thing that you're saying, that this idea, you were talking about Tezab, you're talking about Shyam Benegal. There is this, I don't know, there's this Instagram situation that has happened very recently. Every time there's a very tender character, man or woman, everybody is like, men written by women, or woman written by a woman. And I'm like, do you not think that women can write really problematic characters, or men can write really led, tender women? What is this? How can you assume the gender of the creator based on the person that you're seeing on screen? Because this is a very strange kind of analysis that you're doing, but it's become this trend now.
I mean, men have written bad men characters.
Yes, exactly.
Really bad male characters.
Exactly.
So I don't know if
we have a glaring recent example.
Yeah, we're not. All of us
we shall not speak about it.
Yeah, we shall not speak about it.
There was this hashtag women making women stories, and I used to always feel, but I think I want to make science fiction. Exactly.
So,
that's exactly what you said yesterday.
Exactly. I was telling him this thing that while it's very important that women's stories are told from female perspective, but when you put a full stop after that, then it becomes very limiting. Because some of the most iconic toxic male characters, ones that we think have changed cinema forever, like Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
All of these have had very strong female voices who have identified these traits of masculinity in society and then presented it, right? मतलब ये क्या हो गया कि आपने पहले से assume कर लिया कि नहीं? If there's a tender, sensitive character, has to be written by a woman. This is a very.
I mean, Kiran Rao just made Lapata Ladies, and there is Zoya Akhtar who's made Gully Boy. So these are like really layered individuals that you have written, irrespective of the characters. It's your understanding of a person and their interpersonal relationship and the society. It's so much more than just knowing the gender, I think. Like you said, we don't need to put a full stop.
But my 2 cents on this is that I think gender does matter, because if you see that women do bring a lot of intimate aspects to the portrayal of the characters, which when you say Zoya Akhtar, and like actually both sort of like micro look at the character growth or their character, their subtextual understanding. If mostly like a male arc or a male character is what Oppenheimer is. Like it's a Nolan world which is very macro, which is structural, which is from the outside, which is very hard, which looks at history and reality away from the lens of like singular character or something that it's not a very experiential experience that is portrayed. So I think there is a difference in, I'm not saying that I think non-binary, non-male spectrum does tend to like sort of go into very tender, intimate cinema. And I do think that somewhere, however, like generalization that I may be culpable of like right now, like it may sound criminal, but I do think I have that opinion. That I think men have sort of like have a very hard approach to structure and narrative.
Right.
I wonder about that several times, because I've worked with some male directors who've just shown so much attention to detail and nuance and sensitivity that thought should not probably exist in my mind because of having very positive experiences which show me otherwise. But somehow, I have to say I'm culpable that somehow I trust a women director more instinctively. I don't a woman director more instinctively because I don't know what the reason for that is. Right. It's just that I feel like, oh, this will be told sensitively, and I might be totally wrong. But somehow I approach that situation with more trust than I would And I totally acknowledge my prejudice on that.
I think it's community and family. What you consider your family and your, like they say, your
I guess
you know,
like
pronouns to whatever you're talking about. I'm Indian, I'm woman, I am, you know, it's what you create as your family and what you think.
Yeah.
And I think those are important things that you go through, which is your question that you were asking me, is how do you deal with it? I think it's how you deal with it is individually, is what you create individually for who you are and who you identify as in whatever shape or form. And today that discussion is huge in different ways.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling guilty that we are having this conversation in binary terms.
But that's great to go very folks, right? Without giving too much away, it has this wonderful rejection of the binary.
Completely.
Because at the beginning you're like, there's
and a beautiful
that
exploration of the non-binary.
Because after a while I was like, that didn't go where, because I was expecting it to take a certain direction, and the great thing about the film is
I'm going right after this.
You have to see it. You have to see it because after a while you're like, also it's very interesting to me because the way the look of it is designed, it almost makes you identify your own biases. कि मैंने ऐसा क्यों सोचा कि इस direction में जाएगा? Why was this in my mind in the first place? You know, that's such a, and I want to know from you, in certain films where you are designing the look of a character that's kind of inviting the male gaze but is also like a bona fide personality herself. See something like Dirty Picture. How do you go about, you know, balancing the two in a film like that? This person who invites the male gaze but is also like,
you work to character. I can't explain that more. You work to character. You have to, you know, when you do theatre and when you do it, you write backstories for yourself. You sit and you say, this is my character, I'm writing, this is what I am, this is where I come from, this. We do that on all our characters. I do that on every character that's coming into me, where I sit and think about, okay, so-and-so in Kai Poche, there are 3 boys, how are they going to play together in that space? In Rock On, how are there 4 boys? And I'm going to show them distinctly different. In, you know, in a Dirty Picture, how am I going to create that where, you know, the main thing about Dirty Picture that I actually was, for me, I was a North Indian gaze. And that needed to change. And I wanted to bring that in where we brought in, because all us North Indians, when we saw a South Indian film at that point was Vikkan Murugan, something that you made fun of. When we did Rocket Singh, and I got so much, we got accolades for actually treating a Sardarji as a proper, as a human and not as this caricature of what they were. So for you to change that gaze and to say, oh, okay, I don't want to make Nasir someone who people can laugh at, but someone that this is a serious story that we need to create to make sure that happens. So you have to do it from that manner, and you have to take yourself out of the equation. If I turn around and I'm a feminist, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not. I have to take that away from myself and allow the fluidity of what the character is turning into.
A lot of our auto-awareness as women is around that we are basically like trying to always not be the skank, you know, because this would look slutty, that would look slutty, my cleavage would look slutty.
And it's actually most evident when you see children.
And
it's very sad to watch that. It's
and
very
I see
sad
my
to
kids
watch.
and I'm like, okay, do what you need to do, but know what the repercussions to what you're doing are. And that's what you create in cinema.
Something I tried to do for this Great Indian Kitchen, the adaptation, like when we were discussing costume, and I didn't have much familiarity with Indian costumes at all. So I was like, where do I start? Like, you know, how do I dress her up? And the film is pretty much single location. But I thought that whenever she's dressing up for herself, she was dressing even more beautifully when she was dressing up for the guy. Because I wanted her to feel, because when she's doing something for herself, whether she's either looking for a job or anything, like speaking up for herself, there was something, a little extra spring in the way she dressed up also. That morning she decided that, okay, she's going to talk about something that is her own, So, you know, I thought that, you know, that was something that we very consciously, like I and Sania, we were discussing that whenever it's for herself, there was a big joy. So even when she's maybe dressing up for the guy initially, she's actually dressing up for herself because she wants to, you know, please this guy. It's when later when she has to do anything for, even like there's like a festival scene, she's like just doing very basic because she doesn't care. She's not doing that for herself. She's just doing it for the appearances. Right. So this is what I was trying to bring, like, you know, what you feel about yourself and how you dress yourself up. Like, you know, that was that, like, because it was tough for me to crack that, like how to bring variation in a film that is like, you know, pretty much like this. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, I feel I'm playing a version of me in every character that I play as an actor, and you know, it's like becoming somebody else and yet retaining certain parts of me. Like, if you know, whether it's Serious Men, the way she's dressed up, or you know, whether I'm doing India Lockdown, I'm playing a sex worker, or whether it's Jubilee, where she's a housewife who's rooting for her husband. There's still so much part of me, and there's still all of them amazing women, and they have so many different shades, but they're all, you know, appropriately dressed for or designed, or the way they look. They're definitely attracting a certain gaze to the character and who they are as people.
I love working with costume for characters. Great,
so interesting. So amazing.
I saw your film Jamun recently on a plane.
Oh,
I really liked it.
Thank you.
And in the film, she has a squint.
Yeah.
And you had to do that throughout the film, right?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm like cross-eyed, squint.
It's a really good film.
Thank you.
Relatively lesser known. I mean, I also discovered it on the plane.
Yeah.
And it
No, I
has
love
Raghuveer Yadavji and Sunny Hinduja before his eventual stardom.
Yeah, no, it was great fun working with Raghuveer Yadav ji, and it's a father-daughter relationship film, and it's basically, in fact, I'm so glad you spoke about that film, because she has cross-eyed, you know, she's squint, and it's sort of a hindrance for her to get married, and that's what is one of the subplots of the film, that, you know, like, so the standard of beauty that we have set in society, and she's a lovely daughter, she's a lovely person, the character Chetna, but she's just not, nobody's really liking her, or they don't think she fits to be the bride because she's not normal, you know, her eyes are squint.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing
that. And Rasika, you also, I mean, the range of characters that you've been playing, from, you know, Beena in Mirzapur. Her name is Beena, right? From Beena to now a film like Fairy Folk, where you're going from just the geography of it is completely changing. And you are doing so much work. You know, you've been doing so many shows, so many films. So when you have to juggle so many projects at the same time, and there are the types of characters that you're playing are so different, their physicalities are so different, their geographies are so different, their contexts are so different. Does it ever become difficult to manage that?
I mean, no. I mean, I would like more, in fact, but it's actually a very interesting experience. For example, I had shot Mirzapur and Delhi Crime one after the other. Mirzapur was shot first, and soon after I went to shoot for Delhi Crime, and two completely different characters. And my initial apprehension with Beena Tripathi was I was insecure that I will not be able to play the part, because if the directors and the casting directors had to cast, typically they would have probably taken somebody with a different body type for that part. And somewhere in my head I felt like I had to be that, you know. And I was like, oh, but I don't look like that. So how will I manage that? That would really be hard. It was an interesting challenge. And I tried whatever I could. I didn't know my way around it, honestly. But it was, a lot of it was written.
You look so sexy, man. Come on.
I also think so.
I liked you both in Mirzapur and Delhi Crimes a lot. I'd first met her at Film Bazaar when I'd seen Kissa, and I was
I remember.
I fell in love with her. I was like, who is this? Like, you know, I was like completely in love with her.
So, and Delhi Crime is something which is very, like with Beena Tripathi, I felt like she's this person who, when she enters the room, for some reason people look at her. You know, it's not like she's dressed oddly or that she's drop dead gorgeous, but there's something about her physicality where she enters the room and people just sort of tend to look towards. And I felt I had to do that, which I find very hard because I'm a little Mr. Cellophane, you know. I like to sort of like be like, and if I would enter a room, nobody would like really turn around and look like that.
That's
you know?
not true.
That's
Not
untrue.
true.
Literally everyone in this room turned around.
I'm not meaning to sort of put myself down.
No, it's
like
myths.
that.
It's
But
your myths.
Maybe. So and Delhi crime was very something that I was comfortable with, because I felt like this is who I was when I was in college. You know, it was being shot also some 2 kilometers from my college. So I studied in LSR in Delhi, and we were staying about 1.5 kilometers away from that. So I think it helped sort of bring back all of that idealism of my college days, where I felt कि तो मेरे hard work से दुनिया बदल जाएगी. So these were the two things that I did, and I totally enjoyed that. One was very familiar space, and one was very aspirational space actually, because every time I look at women who carry themselves like that, I'm full of admiration. I'm like, how did she with such a simple gesture become so sexy? You know? So I think that's what you desire as an actor, and the more you have, the better it is.
But so many films, I mean Smita Patil, you know, in Chidambaram, she was so desirable.
She was doing so many different languages also.
Oh yeah, and she was just, like you said, you know, like it was not quote unquote glamorous, you know, but it was just so desirable.
Yeah, you just want to keep looking
so attractive. Even Shabana ji's, you know, so many characters that they've done that are like not makeup or like putting herself like very simply dressed, but just so like, also again I think it's a gaze thing, or you know how they carry themselves as women, or it was an extension of who they are as people that they brought into their characters, or the choice of work, but it was just so gracefully presented.
I always say that. I'm always like, take your best actor that you want. I will change them to whatever you want me to change them to. That is my job. If I can't do it, then I failed. You take who you want, because in this country there's a lot of that. Oh, we want this one because they look like in a certain manner. And I was like, that's not true. Take whoever you want. You can take the best actors that you have. They don't have to be the stars or whatever. If we can't create them and create it into what you want them to be, then we are not doing our job. It's like PR people, I'm constantly fighting. I'm like, they don't want to do a job. They want to take someone who's already there and you know, make sure that they can do what they do. That's not what the job is. The job is actually to pick someone up, and if I can't do that as a costume designer, where I'm taking whoever it is and creating that, need them to be sexy, need them to be non-sexy, need them to have a gaze, not have a gaze, need them to be a wallflower, need them to whatever it is, I can create that. That's my job. So take who you want to take and give us the challenge to actually make that happen.
Arati, you did last year. You made your amazing short film, Astronaut and his Parrot. And again, if you guys haven't seen that film, please watch it. It's available on short film window.
Short film window on YouTube also. Now it's available everywhere.
Starring Ali Fazal. And you made that film by your own. Like you put in your own money. And you made that film inside one room. It's a sci-fi film. It's unimaginable in any other
it was like
industry.
and it was like, I think it was foolishness to jump into it when we jumped into it, because it's an ambitious thing, and our references are Ad Astra and Gravity, because we wanted a man free falling in space, you know, and they have like so many techniques for it, the face swapping, this, that, the anime, you know, they use so many things, and we wanted to create everything on camera. That was the challenge. Like, it's not that we just took up the story, we also gave ourselves challenges that we'll shoot everything on camera. So we were studying and you know, how to do it, like, you know, how to make him move. Then we realized that, okay, if we make a guy move in X and Y axis, maybe Z axis we can do in VFX, or you can do Z axis and X or Y you can do in VFX. So things like that, and I think, it was fun.
My indie heart is going out.
You know, we realized that like how product shot may, you know, so this guy spins off. So, you know, how to make him spin, because then it is all three axes. So we realized that product shot mein jab ye shampoo bottle spin hota hai. So like we got a big huge turntable. So we made him do like that. Then we also had an action director. And you know, very indie person, I would have not gone action director, but I didn't want to be the person who killed Ali Fazal. That's the reason we got an action director. And even I have a very good production manager. इतना के लिए इतना महंगा इतना बड़ा एक्शन डायरेक्टर ने हम लोग सस्ते में कर सकते ऐसे नहीं स्टार है कुछ होगा और also he was wearing this huge astronaut which again like I wish I had met someone because that was the biggest challenge for me to get the right astronaut costume. The thing is when you're making science fiction in India you don't have like already set teams which has like done this or that. So just getting the right costume, we got someone who had done some 3D printing for a BBC show. And this in that also he said glass. So you know when you have to make a glass, usually you make a glass in VFX, but we didn't want to do that because you know then it's a challenge for later. So we couldn't get the right glass. So India Mart I used to call people ऐसे circular glass. So finally my VFX, because he realized if she wouldn't get the glass he will have to recreate the glass. She and his father went to some shop, got this acrylic glass specially printed for the, you know, so this is how the whole thing came together.
That's amazing.
So yeah.
It's unbelievable. You guys have to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that a film like that got made, मतलब हॉलीवुड वाले लोग भी देख के चौक करने रह जाएंगे कि भाई कैसे बनाती है
हमारे लेकिन हाँ हॉलीवुड में होता बॉलीवुड में कोई भाग नहीं देता but we did win Fantasia and also that was good for us. It was a good, you know, we felt good about it that like, you know, at least they were talking about our film and I really think that Ali did a really good job because he brought in a see eventually all this is there but the emotion doesn't come out, it just doesn't work and I felt that he got in and we had a parrot also. So it's a you know, there's a guy free falling to death and he connects to a fortune teller parrot. So it's just a 10-minute of, you know, his death. It's sounds like that, but it ends in a little positive note, even though like he dies, which you will know in the first shot of the film that he's dying. But it's that. So even beautiful. The parrot was, it was the first time I was working, and I'm a huge animal lover, so I was feeling very divided working with an animal, like, you know, you know, but then we just worked, like,
Docudrama waiting to be told, like, how does Arati Kadav make her sci-fi in India?
One more question that I always ask my guests, but I'm always curious about, because everyone has such an individualistic perspective about this. What, for you, is the purpose of cinema? And I would like to ask all of you this question. For you individually, what does cinema mean to you, or what is the purpose of cinema for you?
I mean, for me, it was a creative outlet in the beginning to just like basically put myself together. But over the years, I've realized that it has a larger role. I don't believe that cinema does not have social responsibility. While I may not exactly create something to exactly radically shift the world or change it, I wouldn't want to hamper it either. Like, so for me, I do understand that there is some carbon footprint and of what I create, and if I have got the privilege, I've earned it the hard way to finally have my voice being heard through my work. I do take responsibility for that. So for me, somewhere this work is in combination to me actually doing some sort of like service to my own creative needs and urges, while also servicing community at some level. So I feel it's a healthy balance of both. I am not in a position to divest myself of that role at this point. I don't know where I will be 10 years from now if I'm extremely frustrated and I keep drowning in my misery or won't correct that. I don't know where I would be, or I'll take certain routes which I see. You know, I just might just be in a low life state and like operate from there. But right now I feel that it's a healthy balance where I see that how it serves my needs to express myself and to basically create a voice against the injustices that I experienced, but just to also understand that it wasn't just me who experienced it. It is a larger, I am a larger data, and for me to address it and if not fix it, but to just address it is my role here. So I work in that space.
Okay.
For me, cinema is always, it's about me feeling less alone, or even while I'm watching or making, it just gives me context. I think it's like the reason, I think I had spoken to you once, why the cavemen, you know, collected around a fire, or why we as tribals collected around a town square when someone was telling a story. It's just, you know, just being part of a larger group of people, being connected to the world, to ourselves. So for me, it's always that, like, even if I'm watching a film alone today, there's something, I feel is that telepathic, some connection I have with the person who has written it or is making or acting it. So I just feel that it just gives me context. It makes me make sense of the world around me or things I'm feeling, overall. So for me, cinema is that. It's a very essential, I feel it's as essential as food and water for me, for us to live as, as a functioning beings, like that's what I feel.
I think for me it's about the experiencing magic, and as a performer it's really that fun magical moment in the time between action and cut where you experience something that you had never thought of, and there's just sudden connection between the person standing in front of you and you, or just not even with another person maybe, So it's that magic as a performer, and as a viewer, it's really being able to connect with something that you have, somebody you haven't met, And like sometimes when I met people who've watched something that I've done, I realize that it has affected their life in some way, in any small way, or they've been moved by that. And I was like, I've never met that person, that person's never met me, and yet we've connected before we met. Right. And so just the magic of that is something that I think is the purpose for me.
I mean, obviously, when I was very, very young, I've been watching movies, and I've had an association with cinema as an audience. But I've also had an association with cinema when I was 10, when I acted in Makdi. And I remember when I shot for the film and the film came out, all my school friends and cousins asked me, how were you two? Like, you were two people. I played twin sisters, right?
Chunni and Munni. I remember.
Shabana ji, who played the witch, and she had all of that get up. And I was trying very hard as an 11-year-old to tell my classmates that, there was a camera, and ek side aise band kiya, shoot kiya, ek side phir band kiya, shoot kiya. And the only word that came to my mind after all those little technical knowledge that I'd gained was, it was magic. I can't explain it. It's an amalgamation of sound, design, costumes, and acting, and the way it's shot, the way it's lit, and there's music. It's you're telling somebody's story, but with background score. It's you're making somebody feel something. You watch something and you relate. You have an instant connection with that moment that I've experienced this, or I've heard of this, or we create sunsets and sunrises even when it's dark, and we create dragons and everything that we create worlds. I think if there's one word that can describe cinema, is magic.
Same, fantasy.
Yeah.
For me, it's the fantasy of it. It's the larger than life of it. You know that you deal with your everyday life. And to create the mundane and make it more, for me, that is the fantasy of it. I don't watch a lot of stuff, actually, let me be honest. I don't even watch my own stuff. So when you guys talk about stuff, I find it amazing. Like, oh God, I have to go and see this, I have to do this. But I just feel like my life is so full. I've got so much going on. I've got so much that has happened. And yes, we do movie clubs where, once in a week we all friends get together and watch it, which is you're sitting by the fire and that building that community. But it's that fantasy. It's the fantasy of taking it more than what it is. Your life couldn't be like this. But when we talk to people, and now I have a lot of my younger friends who are writers and stuff, and you talk to them about real life, and they're like, oh my God, that should be in a movie, because the stories, and you realize as you get older that it's not the fantasy, it's actually what's real that you're translating. And I understand the whole, I love the mystic, I love science fiction, I love fantasy, I love dystopian, I love something that's unreal to create. The real, like if I saw somebody, dying of cancer, I'm just like, well, no, I see that's happening around me. Why should I watch it in film, I feel for them now. Why do I need to feel for them in film? So I like that magic of it. So the purpose for me is to create and to take away from the issues that you're dealing with on a daily basis.
Right. Just out of curiosity, I mean, I know that most of the times people do not have like their favorites, but you have such a rich body of work and such great iconic films. Is there one specific film that you probably have the fondest memories of, or you probably feel like it was the most insightful experience for you personally?
You know, when somebody asked me that question, I was like, what do you mean? Because their whole, like I said, because the vastness of film and what you do. When I read Lunchbox, I met Ritesh Batra. I always tell this story. I met him in Guneet's office. I walked in. I was cycling somewhere, and Guneet said, listen, you have to come here. I want you to do something. Come here. So I cycled to Aramnagar. I walked in. I saw this man, and I was just like, I'm never going to be able to work with him. Because he was just sitting there like this. He had just come back, and I was like, and I'm like, coming into the office, and I was like, he's going to die if he, you know, I'm going to change his personality. I don't know what to do with this. And I looked at Guneet and said, sure, I'll get back to you. And I took it home, and literally I read 3 pages of that script, and I was like, I'm doing this film.
Wow.
3 pages. I've never done that in my life. I normally finish my scripts, I'd ponder it, and I was like, I'm doing this because there was there was hope. The first 3 pages on that film gave me hope,
Right.
and I was like, wow, this is a film I want to do. So there are different things. Delhi Belly was amazing. I had all my friends on it. We became really close. We were treated the same. It's AKP, so Imran was sitting next to me on an economy flight. I was like, should I hold your hand? Would that make you feel better? And he was like, we all now together. And we were all treated the same. I love that egalitarian system. For me, it's just like, if I'm not going to fight for something, but if you have everyone flying, if your actors are flying business class, do you not think I'm worth it? For me, I'm addicted to relationships. I'm addicted to the people I work with. If I have a great relationship with the person I work with the actors I work with, it'll be magic. I know it'll be magic. If somebody irritates you and gets under your skin and doesn't trust what you're doing, it's not going to be magical.
But what else are we working for? I mean, we really, most of people who are designers, actors, writers, filmmakers have fought their families. They don't know what are we doing.
Right.
We are fighting budgets. We are, putting the best that we can. We have competitions either with our previous works or with so many new people. I mean, the only thing that is our safe haven is we find good teams that, we can create magic with and create good stories and good characters with that, and we don't even want कि मतलब classic या कुछ बन जाए वो तो अपनी उस film की project की journey है वो आपका fate है. Maybe it will not do very well, but you'll have a blast working on it. Maybe it will be a film that nobody's seen, but you remember that project was so much fun. We really work for that. Honestly, I think I can speak for myself and from what I read in this room. We really work for that, to meet interesting people, to actually eat ghar ka khana, to exchange, have conversation. Who's reading what and working together in that wavelength that we share.
I'm on the other side of the crew because I'm a writer and I don't actually spend that much time on the set, but I do know that creative collaboration with my director is key to my work.
But wherever, even the writer's room, even the pre-production, I'm not saying just the production. I mean, I've seen people bond on post-production also.
Reports.
And everywhere, throughout.
Right. I want to be there to find out.
Writers, if I don't know what you're writing and how you've got to a point, I beg writers.
It's only recently that actually the team actually does meet the writer and they kind of like have a sense or intuitive sense of where the character is going, or we have a conversation like this, because even when I started like 15 years ago, it was rare for the directors to actually even let the writers enter that space. It's only over a period of time that I've seen this far more directors feel more secure and the more international format is sort of like coming into the space. So, but earlier it has been a very like director-led sort of like a format in India especially. So you just like never really meet the writer. The person was actually gone gone into the head of the character and actually has thunk through the backstory, like maybe perhaps actually knows what colors the character has chosen on a certain day because of a certain reason, but the director likes to believe that they have a larger control over it. I'm not saying they don't have, but if actually interactions like these really help character building.
Of course, I think it's because of writers. If this has really happened recently, I think it reflects the kind of characters that we see today, because films till some years ago were very star-led. And hence director-led, because they were not, scripts were not given so much importance. I mean, there are so many stars who have actually gone on interviews and said, "Humne script nahi padha tha," as if it's something to be proud of, you know. And that is so disrespectful. I mean, I don't even understand. And they're not even saying that humne improv kiya tha. It's wo bhi nahi hai.
Very quickly, I'll pick one character off my head, you know, which you created, which is Shahana Goswami's character in Rock On, where she plays and there are two parts of her, which is when she's younger and then older. Actually, everyone would just look at the rock stars and their dressing and all of that, but actually it's her. It's the puritanism in her personality. It's the lack of money. It's that, you know, everything is showing in her clothing, in her attire, in the colors, you know, so her overall look is like so it defines exactly what her state of mind is, and that's exactly where you win. Like, you've just done it so subtly, and like it just plays to our to our psychology in such a subtle way. So you really added to the character without the character having like grand dialogues to say, "I am feeling poor right now." You know, the character is looking poor, and that's exactly what is
when
needed.
People come to me and say, "Oh my God, I love that costume that you did," I'm just like, it's a shit film. I'm like, if you're concentrating on Ranbir Kapoor's jackets in Roy, then I'm just like...
No, but some films allow you that, like Band Baja
Bharat
allows you
people
that.
watched it, and then a lot of people called me and said we were stopping it and watching, but they watched the film and then they did that.
It's a fun film.
I mean? When people come up to me and say that, I'm always nervous. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't do my job right.
Yeah, I know.
This makes sense to me, because if it is not in keeping with the film and it's jarring in your face, then I have not done my job again.
It's like my VFX guy says, if you're noticing the VFX, it's bad VFX.
Correct. If you notice the costume, it is bad costume.
Because it doesn't matter. I mean, every department.
Or sound or anything.
It's exactly what I also say for dialogue, that any dialogue that stood out like a jarring money dialogue is not a good dialogue. But sometimes, of course, some films require it. It's like you said, it's like a requirement format. So you will do it. Like, it's that is needed. But I think the most favorite parts are the parts which are so subtle that you like almost didn't hear them. You almost didn't hear what they were actually saying.
I think recently I really rediscovered the value of costume was when I was dubbing the entire film, and I'm like, I just don't feel it while dubbing. I'm like, I'm in my sweatshirt and I enjoy dubbing. But I had to dub the entire film, and I'm like, I'm just not feeling it, because I want to like.
I tell my sound designer, मैं dubbing में आऊँगी नहीं. अभी तुमको अच्छे से shoot करना, 4 take ले लो, but मैं dubbing में आऊँगी, because it's just tough to recreate that moment, that texture, that ambience. It always stands out. Like whenever it cringes me. Like it's like.
I mean, taking it too far, but I actually don't ride in my pajamas. I don't. I actually, because just to give myself, hinge myself into some sort of a structure, and like this idea that this is labor time, this you need to get out, you need to put in work. So actually, there's a lot of accusation against me that I dress too well for a writer, etc. Literally, I've taken.
Where's your jewel?
I'll style you when you're writing.
I was just going to suggest that. I'll style you when you're writing.
Always the best way to counter that, especially with Menace, I'm like, Nolan wears a suit to work, and he's in his office at 10 a.m. every day, and he wears a tie to work. And those are the that's the kind of cinema he makes. So of course I can take that much effort. So for me, just to say that I need to just step out of this and focus, and that means I am doing something important. And if this is a way, how she was saying that it was very important for her to feel that role, for you to be able to say, okay, now I've switched on that mode, and I am in this space right now. When you're in your pajama and you feel like, oh, the world has gone down and like, more people are dead and there's one more sexist film that's really making money and you're like, oh no, that's not gonna work.
That you feel the pain with or without the pajama. Even when you're well dressed, you'll feel that.
Sure. You just like, it's just a little slightly easier, like a day when you got like that.
Oh, but you have to. I just feel like we're not giving ourselves that space in cinema today. And I feel like I'm constantly fighting people. I'm like, okay, I'm from Jamshedpur. I'm a Parsi, Punjabi, this thing, but you're telling me.
So am I. And so
we all Jamshedpur people.
Born in
Jamshedpur couch. Jamshedpur couch. Oh my God.
We drift towards each other.
Yeah, but I have to understand where I'm coming from. Let me go and sit in a cafe in Delhi. I don't know what's going on, which is what we did at Band Baja. And at that time, I took Ranveer with us because he didn't know Delhi at all. So Ranveer and I literally spent a week in Delhi where we were running around. That's when I made him his bracelet of the Rasta. We went into colleges and he was asking questions. Of course, he's like, ask. I'm like, I'm sitting in a college class. I'm not going to ask questions. But that really gives you the feel of what it is. And I'm constantly fighting production, saying, listen, even if it's for 2 days, let me go to Calcutta. If it's a Calcutta film, let me go. Let me
really
understand and see the atmosphere, because recce's are done with DOPs and this thing. They don't take costumes. And I'm like, take photographs, but the photographs they're giving me is not giving me the feel of what it is. So, you know, we literally come in last minute with thrown low budget, this thing, now create magic.
But and I'm just like, good point. I never considered taking my costume designer.
It's absolutely imperative because they understand the world. You've got everyone. You've got all your HODs going for the recce except for costume
guys.
And then we are told, okay, now you create it and that whole sequence is yours. And I'm just like, how?
For a while, I used to do this with the props people and with the costume. That on some projects we did it, where I would tell them that, and once I was very fascinated by cell phone covers because I feel like that says a lot about the person you are. You know? So I said, so I would tell the props people that ये जो cell phone का cover है, आपको जो लगता है मेरे character के पास होना चाहिए आप एक लेके आओ, मुझे जो लगता है मेरे कैरेक्टर के पास होना चाहिए वो मैं एक लेके आऊँ, so that we can tell where we are, if we are on the same page or not, or maybe they'll come up with a more interesting idea than I will.
So it's very compact.
But I do have to say the fight between costume and production, that's actually costume.
I'm
not saying that out loud.
On different projects it's different. They keep fighting about it. Like ask the
designer who thinks that way, you know, that it's the cell phone cover is costume.
Anything that goes on the body is
that's actually costume.
It's actually costume. Whatever I'm doing, if I've got a umbrella that I'm carrying, it is costume. The reason that we fight between costume and production is, this is what I'm saying, is we don't get the budget to do it.
So everybody wants it to come out of somebody.
उसका budget से निकल जाएगा, उसका budget से निकल जाएगा.
When I was making a spacesuit, the helmet was a point of contention. They said, ये production का काम है, ऐसे costume, like, you know, everybody was pushing it because it was so tough to make it. Production करेगा, production से ये costume करेगा. It's actually costume,
It is. But I'm constantly like, production make production.
One thing that I also start doing with my crews, which I really like, is like having this 3-4 days of film festivals where we see all the reference films, but also what has really influenced me. You know, एक कुरुसावा की high and low आई जाती है हर film में, like, you know, just for the sake of them.
It's the best thing to do. I do.
That's very lovely.
It's the best thing.
And it's the best bonding exercise. And sometimes even as you know, if you're working with like fresh team, you know, even your assistants sometimes come up with great references, and it's a learning experience for you also. It's not them you showing what's your favorite, and they're like, oh, ye bhi to hai, like, you know. Like for this film, Great Indian Kitchen, I had all these references of Iranian films and this and this. Someone eat, drink, man, woman,
my favorite movie in the whole world.
And that came up in our film festival, and it has changed the way we made the film completely. And like, you know, and so it's good to do it.
My favorite
I love like angry. I'm getting goosebumps just. And it's not even my film, like, you know.
Yeah, Koyan and Skatsi. Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. Those are my favorite films ever.
So yeah, so and like so it's a nice
That
way
is
to
one of
grow
my
with the
favorite
team
films.
also, and
The
that's
nuances in that film,
and
that's
so detailed. It's like a
so detailed.
yeah.
You're hungry
Food,
when you leave
the food they should make
You're like,
it.
can I eat?
Yeah.
As soon as you leave, you could have
Right.
eaten 10 packets of popcorn, but you're still like,
yes.
should we go eat? Should
In
we
that
go?
he blows a duck also while cooking, like dead.
Amazing.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Amazing.
What a man.
And what details
what
he go.
hope, What detail. It's one of my favorite films.
Yes, same here. Yeah.
I have not watched
Yeah,
it.
you have
Please
to.
watch it. It's one of my favorite
I'll
films.
get it for you.
Yeah.
During COVID, we were all locked up together and we were pulling.
Once I get off my diet.
yeah, don't watch it while you're on your diet, please.
That's a very difficult film to watch
Yeah.
if you're on it. Yes. The food is really, it's very lively.
Yeah.
It's
Very
literally
sensual.
calling you in.
We incorporated that in our film also.
Yeah.
Like the food.
Right.
We're getting lot of
as well.
Which is what we did in Tumse Na Ho Payega when
nice.
Shweta Basu
Yeah.
Associate did the.
Yeah.
So that was one of her things.
Food
the
becomes a character,
the
yeah.
food photography was
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Yeah.
I just want to say that you'll feel like eating chips when you watch Fairy Folk.
As well.
For very different reasons. It's not been well.
But when we were during COVID, we were all locked down together in my house in Goa, and all of us, we had a little jar that we all put our names of movies in, so we'd pull out, and they pulled out, they were like, what are we watching? This eating man. I said, just watch it.
Yeah.
We'll have a discussion later.
Yeah.
They also made me watch some really, I don't know, I watched Avatar in Hindi.
Oh God.
So, so there was that.
But yeah, no, on like an ending note, since our team is
Exhausted.
telling us, yes,
And hungry by this time.
hungry by this time as well.
Yeah.
But no, genuinely, if you had to, from your respective paths in making films, if you had to give advice to a young person or any person who's just starting out in cinema, that you have to keep this in mind when you're starting out in this game or this work, what is that one advice that you'd give?
There's no money.
That's warning almost.
Practical
Like,
advice.
There's no
That's-
money. You have to really love what you do because,
Right.
yes, if you're doing personal styling, if you're doing other things, you'll get the money. But, people think that being a costume designer, you suddenly making, you're not. You can create name and fame. I've started my jewelry business to make money because there's no money in it. So love what you do what you're doing, and know that it's not a money-making venture.
Right.
And you have to work like a dog. This is, people think that entertainment, kitna maza aane wala hai. No, you work like a dog. There was some girl who said, does Niharika ma'am always take meetings at 5 in the morning? I was like, yeah, we have to finish a presentation. We have to finish till 5 in the morning. We'll party till 5 in the morning tomorrow and day after if you want. But this has to be done now, and you have to work till 5.
Right.
So there are timings and there's no money, and you've got to love what you do, and that magic of cinema has to come. Believe in the magic and it'll happen.
Right.
That's my advice.
I think I have something similar to say. I would always say go for broke. Like you were basically not into it for anything else. You did all the fame and everything else that comes with it, the money, if there is any.
Yeah.
All of that is not actually what is going to keep you committed to this. What keeps you committed to this is a larger game where you have to understand art takes time and nothing will come to you easy, and it's never about 5 years, it's never about a decade, it's actually about a larger goal that you have towards yourself and your work, and it's that kind of perseverance and consistency that is going to see you through. It is never about what's happening outside, it's never about, you have to understand that nature of your work is designed around cyclical sort of like productivity, and it's got nothing to do who you are, where your craft is, has got nothing to do with that. You will sometimes be sort of endorsed by how it is being received, sometimes you will be defeated by it, but you have to just take all of that in your stride. And so basically you have to go for broke. You really have to just go for the process. So that is, I will always tell people that that's exactly where we make that mistake of thinking that it is about fame, power, money, etc. Nothing has destroyed talent more than early success, unmerited success, windfalls. Nothing has destroyed talent more than that. Like actually, success fails more people than failure.
Yeah.
Is the
ultimate truth.
It's the ultimate truth.
I would speak specifically as a writer director. Like, you know, for me as an outsider, when I came in, if you want to be a director, you have to learn how to write, like at least to initially bootstrap yourself. And I also really believe in the power of short films, because that's a very good way for you to assess your craft, build your team, and you know, that's how you gain strength. Because I thought it gave me a lot of strength. By the time I was making my first film, it didn't even feel to me that it was my first film. My team was familiar. I could, you know, take those leaps of faith because I had already, you know, done things at smaller scale and learned and failed or whatever. So I really believe in that. And this second thing I want to say is like, you know, while you are really focused on, you know, discovering and researching and, you know, knowing what you want to make, have two ends of the spectrum. You should always be looking at. One is like the classical cinema, always learning from that. And one is also all the new stuff that is happening everywhere. So don't stop learning from really new voices, but also, you know, there are like people, when they discover cinema, they discovered filmmaking techniques, and like they had a lot of passion. Like even now, sometimes when I'm low, I just go and watch a Buster Keaton short film, and I come back, it's like, this guy's like literally killing himself to make his stuff. And you know, so that's, you know, so those are the two things that I feel that one has to, you know,
I think if you're starting out, I think I would tell somebody that just call up all your close friends and family and tell them that you're never going to be there for important occasions, because the day that you've committed to something personal, something earth-shattering will be happening on shoot and you'll have to go. And that is the reality of this profession. A friend of mine was a DOP before I got into the business, and he would always book 8 tickets to go home to Lucknow to visit his parents, because he just never knew which day he would have. And I would laugh at him then, and then when I joined the business, I was like, he was damn right. You know? And I started booking 3-4 tickets, except I forgot to cancel the ones that I didn't use. So that's a different story. But that, and definitely I think just specifically for performers, I think the one thing to know and realize is that even though you're a very small part of this bigger picture, even though you sometimes get to be the face of it, and you have very little control over what happens, and you have to learn to give it everything that you have, and yet say, I don't have any control. So it's almost like, you know, after I finish a shoot where I'm so emotionally invested in it, it almost feels like a rude breakup, you know, because I finished the shoot and nobody wants to talk to me after that till they need me for dubbing. And they are all with the project all this while. I mean, sometimes when I meet directors about a month or 2 after we finish shoot, I'm like, hi, how are you? Because I've genuinely missed them. And they've been watching me on the air for like 10 hours in a day, and they're like, I do not want to see you. So it's really that thing where you give it your all at that time when you're shooting, and then you have no control over it. So then you just accept whatever becomes of it.
Well, for people who are fascinated by cinema and want to really, who are starting out and seeing this as a profession, I think it's important to know your why, because a lot of times we are very fascinated by movies as an audience, and I know a lot of actors who are also very good, could be very good editors, or could be very good casting agents, could be very good writers, but because they see actors are the face of a film, they aspire to become that, and that's not wrong at all. But I think it's very important to muscle your strength instead of working on what your weakness is. So recognize, identify that, because it takes, you know, you could do anything and be super successful. You know, you could be sound designing and winning the Academy for Slumdog Millionaire. So it doesn't matter what department you choose, as long as you're doing it with love. You sit and watch the end credits, you'll realize how many people work on a film project, and then really identify your talent, identify your strength, and just work on that. So I think it's important to know the whys and the motivation behind it. On failures and success, yes, there's no money, yes, there are failures, but there's also money and there's also success, which is also a big, you know, somewhere one needs to be aware of, because a lot of people I've seen, I think what you choose to do once you've become successful is who you really are. I think it's important to know that you can produce 3 Idiots and Munna Bhai and still make a 12th fail. You know, it really takes to know who you are when you're successful, when you have the money,
and when you have the following, and when you have the brands, and when you have the world at your feet begging to wear your brand, and doing the things, and you get free holidays at Maldives and islands, even then, if you're choosing your art is truly who you are. And for new actors, please switch off your mics on set when you're not taking. They're listening to everything. So that's a big.
That's very good advice. I've suffered.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I've tried. I always tell my friends, I will be the last minute friend to join anything. I'll say yes to everything. I say yes to everything. But I cannot. I said yes to going to see Russell Peters and I couldn't go, and I get abused for it. But it's what your work is, and I'll never tell my assistants to choose one over the other, but I will judge them when they choose otherwise. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You chose that? You're really not serious.
Hard relate. We Jamshedpur people.
It's the couch.
पीछे से इम्तियाज अली भी निकलने वाले मेरे को लग रहा है. I was scared the whole time. But on that note, ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a super insightful chat and very long. Much longer than any of us expected.
Yes.
But I mean, all of us are very glad about it.
Yes, there's so much that I also did not think that I learned from this, because in my head,
It was for us also. It was just very nice to just sit here and hear you guys talk to each other about so many important.
Thank you for the nice
things.
question.
I was just going to say also thank you for putting amazing people together. I have to say this.
That we want to
That was
pat
really
ourselves on the
fun.
back for,
Yeah.
and
And
especially
specifically
Anshika.
Anshika,
who worked so
I have
hard.
to
Good
say,
job,
she
Anshika.
just I'm really happy
Good job.
on this panel with these amazing women. So I have to say that.
And big thank you to House of Surkh again.
Yes.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the lovely outfits.
Thank you for
It
the
is,
outfits,
I mean, you guys help us, and that is, we are independent creators, and that's how we also are able to do the kind of things that we want to, and this is something that we really wanted to do. So thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
Hope to see you guys again, and all the best for all the projects that all of you have coming up. Please go watch
Very
We're gonna watch Fairy Folk.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.